Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Welcome back, watching Commodity Champions. While we are, of course, discussing the crop and the yields and some of the concerns, of course, according to farmers there. But Mr. Dongre, the government measures, whether it has been stock limits or tweaking export or import, while these reactions to price or availability are immediate or reactive from the government, but sometimes would you say that they outlive the purpose and get extended over seasons?
Any kind of restrictions creates price distortion. Any kind of restriction in the supply chain, right from the farmer to the retail shelf, will create price distortions, and it severely restricts the process of a natural price evolution. So you put a stock limit, say, at the farmer level, the returns to the farmers get affected. You put a stock limit at the processor level, the efficiency of processing and the efficiency in the supply chain gets severely affected. So the idea is to keep an open supply chain so that the price evolution is natural. And I think one should then look at steps of opening up exports so that what sells below the minimum support price gets processed and exports, which is providing good returns to the farmers, as well as providing some sort of a support to the milling sector. So that is one probably step that the government should seriously look up is to the opening of exports. The short-term measures, of course, in terms of putting in quantitative restrictions were probably necessary at that time, but hopefully our association has made representations and these should be lifted hopefully in the near term.
Dr. Sen, how would you react to Mr. Dongre's comments here? And of course, we spoke to the Agri-Secchi as well last week, who said that they bring about these changes as they are sensitive to various sectors, and the changes or the reactions, of course, are as per the industry demands, of course, whether it is tweaking export or import duty or stock limits, etc. Looking at all the stakeholders, what is your sense? Would you say that these reactions sometimes become structural, even as they're not intended that way?
I agree entirely with what Mr. Dongre said. I would simply add the following. A, it is better to rely upon tariffs rather than on quantitative controls of any kind. So if you're going to do anything, you can actually put up the import tariff if you want to give some signal to the farmer. You can bring down the import tariff if you want to give the opposite signal in favor of consumer. But don't, for heaven's sake, play around with quantitative restrictions on exports and imports, and stay clear as far as possible from stock limits unless things are really gone over the top. Now, the problem is that I think politicians and most others disagree on when things have gone over the top.
Well, your point is well taken. Mr. Mehta, do you want to add to that? Because
I'll give a classical example. Imported oil, there's no stock limit, and when the domestic producer, they are subject to the stock limit. Yeah. So your domestic farmer is subject to the stock limit. And import oil, which is a 70%, is a free. What sort of stock limit? Is there time to bury the Assessed Commodity Act? There's no need to have an Assessed Commodity Act, a stock limit, if you want to give a real good price to the farmers.
So, Mr. Mehta, what would you say? What are the challenges as you see at this point in time? Because the government clearly has been reacting to what the industry has been putting out, and they have been reacting also to the price rise or availability of the produce.
So, the major challenge before the oilseed sector is the stagnant oilseed production. Practically, Last 10 years, you see the production is about 26, 28 million ton. Productivity also is a stagnant, about 900 to 2000 kg. This is a major challenge. And third challenge, rising imports. Now today we are importing about 15 million tons worth about 75,000 crore. And dependency has gone up to 70%. It's a matter of food security. Can you afford to have this luxury? So government must address all the issues concerning to oilseed sector and must focus on the productivity. One area is a GM crop. Introduction of GM crop, it can give about 20 to 30% extra productivity. Second is about the promotion of the mustard seed cultivation. That's all. And why don't divert certain area in Punjab and Haryana where we have the grains, rice or wheat? Why not switch over certain area from grain to the mustard seed? That's a possible. Maybe you may offer a higher price time being to encourage the farmers to switch over from grain to the rapeseed. So these are some of the area. And one more concern is land loss. Corporates are not allowed to buy the land. The farm holdings are so small, you cannot expect productivity. I think that also time has come to relook at the land laws of the country.
Dr. Sen, how would you react to that? And what's your sense on how much is the government really listening to all of these presentations and suggestions from the industry? And do you see all those changes coming in?
See, look here, I'm sure government is listening, and the presentations are not very different from year to year. You get some variation depending on how things are, but the basic point is the following. I think on the issue of GM crops, that's mainly got to do with soybean and potentially to do with rapeseed, which is the new GM crop, which is at the moment, being considered by the government. Now, GM crops have a political, they become a political issue, and the government is facing opposition from for example, the Swadeshi Jagran Manch. And so, I mean, I think this is, again, nothing new. I think previous governments have also faced political oppositions and have pulled back from GM crops.
Sure.
But the point I would like to make is that it's not a question of higher production. At the moment, the production is not fetching prices. So the point is that it is a question of doing something about the shifts from one crop to another crop in such a way that we can actually get a higher price. We can produce those crops or those commodities for which the market has a bigger demand. I mean, it's managing that. And managing that, I think I agree with on the oilseed side. I think we should have as an objective reducing the extent of imports. But that is an issue which has to do with relative domestic prices, both of oils as well as of meals. And I think one of the real problems with soybean is what is happening in the meals market. But I think the government can act, provided it is willing to come down and take strong action and saying that no physical controls, no quantitative restrictions, but yes, we are willing to have a tariff regime which helps the farmers.
So your point is very well taken, and that is what really needs to be done. And of course, various industry sources have been making those presentations. Final few comments from all of you. Mr. Mehta, what would you say, at least on the prices going forward from here on now? The concerns are many, and the government is, of course, reacting to a lot of that. But what is your sense on prices now with the kind of scenario we stand at?
If you look at that particular supply of edible oil, world is flooded with edible oil.
Right.
Price, so international market is not likely to go up in the near future. Maybe slightly up, but not much. You have the bump for soybean crop, you have a palm availability, reduced usage of the palm in the biodiesel. So that will also bring more pressure on the food basket.
Sure.
So overall, if you look at the price, I am not thinking the price will jump to a great extent, maybe slightly up.
And Mr. Dongre, a final comment from you as well. What is your sense on the prices going forward from here?
So I think the availability currently is quite good in India. The stocks are of some of the pulses are at record highs. So the stock availability and the arrivals on the import front are extremely good. The sowing acreage, as you know, has been good. There has been widespread rainfall throughout the pulse growing regions. So I think the supply will match demand, and I think prices will remain in a range.
So view coming in from both of our guests that prices will remain in range when it comes to pulses as well as edible oil. And Dr. Sen, thank you so much for joining us as well. And your point is very well taken that no quantitative controls is what all of these sectors need. At the most, it should be tariff that the government should be moving on. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us and doing that discussion. With that, completely out of time on this edition of Commodity Champion.